Chaos hit the streets of Puerto Vallarta, the Mexican state of Jalisco, and beyond Sunday, as Mexico's most notorious drug cartel fiercely retaliated after soldiers killed their leader, Nemesio Ruben Osquera Cervantes, widely known as El Mencho.
Chaos hit the streets of Puerto Vallarta, the Mexican state of Jalisco, and beyond Sunday as Mexico's most notorious drug cartel furiously retaliated after soldiers killed their leader, Nemesio Ruben Osquera Cervantes, widely known as El Mencho. In the shadows of Mexico's long and bloody drug war, one name rose above the rest in whispers of fear and power: Nemesio Osquera Cervantes, better known to the world as El Mencho. His story is one of ambition, brutality, and the relentless machinery of organized crime. From humble beginnings in rural Mexico to commanding one of the most violent criminal organizations in the world, his rise reshaped the balance of power in the underworld. And yet, like so many who built empires on fear, his reign has been marked by betrayal, bloodshed, and an uncertain end. Born in the small town of Aguila, in the state of Michoacán, El Mencho grew up in poverty. Michoacán was a land of avocado orchards, rugged mountains, and limited opportunity. For many young men there, the choices were narrow: migrate north in search of work, or enter the shadow economy fueled by narcotics trafficking. As a teenager, Osquera reportedly crossed into the United States, seeking work in California. Instead, he found himself entangled in the drug trade. In the 1980s, he was arrested in the US on drug charges and eventually deported back to Mexico. Deportation did not end his criminal ambitions, it hardened them. Back in Mexico, he entered the orbit of the powerful Sinaloa cartel, one of the most dominant trafficking organizations in the country. The Sinaloa cartel operated like a multinational corporation, moving cocaine, methamphetamine, heroin, and marijuana across borders with ruthless efficiency. Under leaders such as 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐫𝐿 𝐶hapo Guzman, it became synonymous with the global drug trade. But Osquera was not content to remain a foot soldier. He later aligned himself with the Milenio Cartel, a smaller but influential criminal group operating in western Mexico. When the Mexican government intensified its crackdown on cartels in the mid-2000s, fractures appeared within criminal organizations. Leaders were arrested or killed, alliances shifted, territories became battlefields. Out of this chaos, a new force emerged. Around 2010, following internal conflicts and the collapse of the Milenio Cartel, Osquera founded what would become the Jalisco New Generation Cartel. At first, the group was seen as just another splinter faction fighting for survival. But under El Mencho's command, it grew at an astonishing rate, seeing distinguished itself with extreme violence and sophisticated propaganda. The cartel released slick, militaristic videos showing masked gunmen in armored vehicles, brandishing high-powered rifles, and pledging loyalty to their leader. These displays were designed to send a message to rivals, to authorities, and to the public, seeing was organized, well-armed, and unstoppable. El Mencho proved to be a strategic thinker. Rather than simply controlling smuggling routes, 𝐾𝐭 diversified its operations. It expanded into synthetic drug production, particularly methamphetamine and fentanyl, capitalizing on global demand. Laboratories sprang up in rural areas, hidden deep in forests, or behind unassuming walls. The cartel established distribution networks that stretched across Mexico and into the United States, Europe, and Asia. Civilians often bore the brunt of the violence. El Mencho remained elusive, avoiding the spotlight and controlling CJNG through trusted lieutenants and family. Semi-autonomous cells kept the cartel running despite arrest or death. His secrecy, delegation, and fear-based leadership have made him one of the most wanted yet unreachable criminals, leaving a lasting impact on Mexico's drug trade and society. Yet, even in death, El Mencho's influence remained tangible, a lingering shadow over the criminal landscape he had meticulously shaped. The 𝐶hapo, or Jalisco New Generation Cartel, continued to operate with the level of coordination and ruthlessness that testified to the organizational genius of its founder. El Mencho had constructed a criminal enterprise that was not dependent on a single individual, but on a decentralized network capable of autonomous action. This structure, paired with the loyalty he instilled in his inner circle and the pervasive climate of fear he cultivated over decades, ensured that his strategies would endure long after he was gone. The territories under his control did not immediately crumble, nor did his associates abandon the codes and methods that had elevated CJNG to international notoriety. The consequences of his reign were and remain deeply human.
Hello, welcome. I'm 𝐬𝐜𝐫𝐫𝐢. In Mexico, the army has confirmed the death of one of the country's most feared drug lords, known as Mencho, caught and killed in a dawn raid. He was killed in an operation in the town of Tlalpapa. The US had previously issued a $15 million reward for the capture of the co-founder and leader of the Jalisco New Generation drugs cartel. It's feared for its use of extreme violence. Violence broke out in the country as a result of his killing. Suspected members of the cartel began burning dozens of cars and trucks in the state and a neighboring state as the army moved in, possibly to try to delay the operation. Our Latin America correspondent Will Grant joins us now from Mexico. Good to have you with us, Will. First of all, for people who might not know anything about Mencho, who was he?
He was crucial, 𝐬𝐜𝐫𝐫𝐫. I mean, we often talk in Mexico about kingpins and drug lords and so on. This was one of the very, very biggest. In this particular moment in time, the most wanted man in Mexico, by some distance, I would say. The feared leader.
Communities long under his sway continue to bear the scars of his leadership. Families still search for loved ones who disappeared in the cartel's shadow, their grief compounded by decades of uncertainty. Towns ravaged by mass killings, extorted businesses, and paralyzed local economies continue to grapple with instability. Markets, once thriving under legitimate trade, were replaced by routes for smuggling, coercion, and illicit profit, all orchestrated by an empire built on fear. Even as authorities attempt to dismantle CJNG, the echoes of Mencho's strategies complicate their efforts. His operational blueprint, marked by a combination of extreme violence, propaganda, and strategic foresight, ensured that the cartel's survival was possible, even without its figurehead.
It just triggers more violence and fragmentation. Do you think that is likely to happen now? I mean, what is the benefit of taking someone out like that?
Without a doubt, Mencho was responsible directly and indirectly for the violent death of thousands of people, and he needed to be brought to justice. However, the kingpin strategy, as you rightfully say, has a major flaw. When you remove the top dog, his lieutenants are going to fight more aggressively against each other to slice up the criminal empire. And the CJNG had one hell of a criminal empire, from drugs to illegal mining to oil theft to migrant smuggling to extortion. There's a lot for people to fight over. And Mencho, as I said, had this sort of iron grip over the CJNG for 15 years. There was no talk of a successor. There was no talk of someone picked to be his heir. There are 4, 5, 6 different leaders, each with significant ground across Mexico, each with a lot of troops under their command, and I'm not aware of any one of them.
Reflecting on Mencho's life, it is impossible to separate the man from the environment that shaped him. Born Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes in Michoacán, he was a product of systemic neglect and entrenched poverty in a society where state presence was sporadic at best. These conditions provided fertile ground for the emergence of figures who could exploit both institutional weaknesses and economic desperation. Mencho's story is illustrated not merely of individual ambition, but of a larger system in which organized crime thrives. His path from a marginalized youth to the leader of one of the most feared criminal organizations in the world reveals the mechanics of modern organized crime, the calculated application of terror, strategic alliances, exploitation of communities, and ruthless consolidation of power. Yet the human cost of this rise cannot be overstated. Beyond the headlines of mass killings and high-profile confrontations with law enforcement, there lies a trail of human suffering. Families displaced, children traumatized by violence, communities stripped of economic stability, and ordinary citizens forced to navigate life under constant threat. All of these are the unseen casualties of Mencho's ambition. The narrative of his life is inseparable from the stories of those who lived under his shadow, those whose lives were permanently altered or ended as a result of his decisions. His death, while a significant event, does not erase the suffering that his empire inflicted or the structural weaknesses that allowed it to flourish.
This video of the smouldering wreckage of one of the family's cars, riddled with bullet holes, was filmed by the father-in-law of the woman who was driving it.
This is for the record. Nita and 4 of my grandchildren are burnt and shot up right on the road out of La Mora.
This was, a family member said, nothing short of a massacre. Renita LeBaron had been traveling with 4 of her children. They and all of those who died were members of a family from a Mormon community which settled in Mexico decades ago. Christina Langford also died. A number of children who survived are now in hospital in the US. Family members say they've seen the violence increasing.
Helpless families are being innocently killed down there. It's not just got caught in gunfire in the wrong place at the wrong time. This is a whole new level of cartel violence. As of this point, it's not over. We still don't know what's going to happen next.
Mencho's legacy is therefore a double-edged one, a testament to extraordinary organizational capability and simultaneously a cautionary tale about the dangers of power built on fear. He demonstrated the ability of a single individual to influence not only local criminal dynamics, but global drug trafficking networks. His methods, fear, loyalty, intimidation, and calculated propaganda have inspired other criminal groups in Mexico and beyond, establishing a model of organized crime that is both highly adaptive and extremely resilient. Yet his death also underscores the inherent fragility of such empires. Power derived from violence and terror is inherently unstable. In the wake of his absence, Chang faces internal fractures, potential leadership struggles, and challenges from rival factions, eager to exploit any vulnerability. The very tools that allowed Alemencio to dominate brutality, absolute loyalty, and strategic ruthlessness can become sources of weakness, creating opportunities for his enemies and for the state to intervene. The enduring lesson from Alemencio's story is not simply about the rise and fall of a criminal mastermind, but about the conditions that make such figures possible. His life reflects systemic failures, widespread poverty, limited opportunities, weak institutions, and the insatiable international demand for illicit substances.
The murder of US citizens prompted this from the president. A wonderful family and friends from Utah got caught between 2 vicious drug cartels who were shooting at each other, with the result being many great American people killed. If Mexico needs or requests help in cleaning out these monsters, the United States stands ready, willing and able to get involved and do the job quickly and effectively. This is the time for Mexico, with the help of the United States, to wage war on the drug cartels and wipe them off the face of the earth. In response, Mexico's President Andrés Manuel López Obrador said he will speak to Trump, but ruled out any foreign intervention.
I send
an embrace of condolence to the whole LeBaron family, to the family members of the victims. This is a terrible tragedy because children and innocents lost their lives. I'll speak with President Trump to thank him for his support and see if in cooperation agreements there's the possibility of getting help in cases where it's necessary.
While individual criminal brilliance played a role, it was the interplay of societal weaknesses and systemic vulnerabilities that allowed CNG to rise to prominence. The challenge for Mexico and for the global community is addressing these structural issues, breaking the cycle of violence, and preventing the emergence of new figures who might follow in his footsteps. In many ways, Mencho's death marks a turning point rather than a conclusion. The CHE will continue to evolve, adapt, and possibly thrive under new leadership. Power vacuums may ignite conflicts, rival factions may compete for dominance, and regions long under cartel control will continue to experience uncertainty and fear. Even decades later, the name Mencho will evoke fear and reflection. He was more than a criminal mastermind. He symbolized the tragic realities of Mexico's drug war. From Michoacán to global trafficking networks, his life and death reveal the endurance of criminal organizations and the human cost of corruption, instability, and violence. His story highlights the fragility of power and the suffering of communities caught in its wake.